Hey everyone, this guy Safa. Welcome to Explosions 101. So let's get started. So we've got a lot of things to look at, so let's get started quickly on this. Alright, so first up we're going to be looking at sources of explosions. What are explosions? Anything that goes boom, causes damage to entities, breaks blocks. The most common one, the TNT. Good old faithful. Next up we got beds and respawn anchors, which basically work in alternate dimensions, such as both of them in the end though. Next up we got the end crystals, any dimension once you click on it, and the most notorious one, creepers. Creepers are the most nasty ones. They are horrible, absolutely horrible. But yeah, so now every single source of explosion has a number associated with it. We've got TNT, which has got the number 4, and basically what this determines is the kind of blast radius and the damage caused by the explosion. There are some complicated formulas, but yeah, there are decent estimates anyway. So TNT is 4, which sort of gives you the base idea. Beds and respawn anchors are 5. They also do cause some fire, so that's an interesting thing to note. We've got end crystals, which is the most powerful at 6, most powerful natural cause, and we've got creepers at 3. Now you could actually convert them to charged creepers, which gives you a much larger explosion at 6. You've also got Ghast Fireballs, which are just 1, which are basically completely useless. Now how does an explosion work? Basically we've got the source of the explosion, at which the explosion strength is the number itself, and as we go away it progressively gets weaker. And over here I've basically shown it using these colors basically because they're going lighter. I guess it makes sense, but yeah, the further and further away you are, the less likely something is to explode. Now in case we put a block, every single block has a number associated with it called as its blast resistance, and the blast resistance basically reduces the strength of the explosion of the rays behind it. Basically, the explosions are carried out in form of rays, and it's calculated at every block along it. So yeah, if you have a block in between, it reduces the explosion. So here's glass. Glass has a really low blast resistance, so you sort of get a feel of what's the kind of radius you're dealing with the TNT explosion. As you can see, that's the hole that it makes. There's a tiny bit of randomness involved as well. Now in case I was to have some stone, as you can see, because stone basically blocks some of the explosion beyond it, the ring of stone around that would actually shield the blocks behind it. Now a consequence of this blast resistance is that if you have something that is totally unbreakable, such as obsidian, which has got a really high blast resistance, nothing behind it can explode. And this is really important. Is what you use to protect your builds from explosions. So if you needed something, a larger area to explode, you need to make sure that the highest blast effectiveness or the number associated with the ray is actually reaching that. The best way is to actually have the block slightly outside so that the rays can actually reach farther out without losing too much of its strength. So that's why we've got this TNT, which is placed on a glass pane. Glass pane doesn't have much blast resistance. As you can see, the damage that is caused is, well, a whole lot larger. So if you're mining, it's obviously a slightly smart idea to have your TNT slightly further out. Also, TNT has a 100% drop rate, which is really useful in blast chambers, unlike creepers and, say, end crystals, for example. Now, using unbreakable blocks, there are a couple of others, such as water. So if I had a piece of TNT that has fallen into some water, it doesn't actually do any damage to the blocks around it because water itself has got a blast resistance of about 100. Similarly, for enchanting tables actually for some reason block or encompass the TNT explosion. Now as you can see, this pigment in the background actually took damage. That's because there's a minimum entity damage caused by an explosion. Alright, so next up, talking about the fact that explosions travel in rays. The thing is, an explosion can also travel diagonally, even though we've got a block of obsidian that's actually blocking the rays from going downwards. So right now, if I was to set it, yes, you can shift click on a TNT piece and it will not light on fire. You can see that the glass actually explodes one block below the obsidian and does not stop right at the level as it would be the case if it was perfectly horizontal. Next up, we got something really important. Fuse time in TNT is exactly 4 seconds. 40 ticks. And this is a number that's used a lot. It's used in all kinds of funds, so it's a really good thing to keep in mind. So yeah, you can obviously activate TNT using a flint and steel, And if you activate it, since it takes 4 seconds, thanks to gravity, which is surprisingly accurate in Minecraft entities, it takes 80 blocks of falling before it blows up. The other ways of setting off TNT is using fire charges or using a flame bow. And an arrow, yeah, you don't really need a special arrow. Flame bow works perfectly. All 3 of these actually count as player activation, and the computer remembers it to be activated by a player, and it does have its own interesting side effects. You can also activate it using redstone or using a dispenser, and all of them once again ensure that it's exactly 4 seconds before it sets off, though there's some delay with a dispenser. The next up, we've got my arch nemesis, the Tnt Duplicator. These, I have no idea how they work, honestly. This is something that I picked up off of YouTube or from memory, bit of a mixture of both, but yeah, they work and they're really interesting occasionally. So now, why do you need to know player activated TNT? So right now, if I was to go into survival and set off this piece of TNT, 4 seconds later, it will kill all of them. And as you can see, they've actually dropped XP. Basically, if you set off a piece of TNT, it kills mobs with the looting 3 effect. And yeah, you can see the drops are quite sizable compared to if they had been killed by fall damage. And something you would notice is that the zombie pigmen are actually aggravated at me because it counts like I have damaged them. Alright, so now using our knowledge of blast timings and blast resistance, we can use it to break some netherite. So ancient debris is famously blast resistant, but however, when it's moving, the precise moment that is moving, its blast resistance actually drops down to 0. And this is the case for all blocks. Any single block that is moving has 0 blast resistance. So up here we've got a dispenser with some TNT in it. The TNT drops down onto the obsidian right there once I pull the lever. And from that block, we've got a repeater on a 1 tick delay, and then we've got a cycle of repeaters, 10 more repeaters, all of them on 4 ticks delays. So that's 41 ticks, which eventually pushes this wall of ancient debris. Now, because there's a 1 tick delay with the dispenser, the pistons will extend the second the TNT explodes. And as you can see, it blows up. And some of the ancient debris is saved because it was out of the blast radius. Now, this is also the cause of the famous Headless Pistons. Right now, if I was to replace those 2 blocks there and I was to make the pistons retract, you can see that the blocks actually get deleted from the world. This is what's used in breaking bedrock. Alright, so next up, we're going to be looking at TNT activated from dispenser. There's a tiny bit of randomness. As you can see, I want the TNT to go right through that hole, but there's a tiny bit of randomness of the TNT entity essentially, and it does not go perfectly straight down. Now, in case you wanted this, in case you had a long blast tube or something in a big farm, it's really important to make sure that it's centered. Now, since TNT is an entity, we can also use some other entity related tricks. Over here I've got some walls, and as you can see, only if I'm in the center of the block am I down at this level. If I go slightly off, the walls are actually pushing me up a block. So basically that's what we got here. The piston extends and connects the walls up, meaning the TNT can actually get centered before it drops down. The piston just extends a block later and allows the TNT to fall down. Alright, next up, once again, because TNT is an entity once it's activated from a dispenser, it is affected by honey blocks. Right now, if I have to go run up against these honey blocks and fall down, you can see I get the sticky situation, meaning I've actually slowed down. And the same thing happens for TNT. Now, why would you use this? You basically sometimes want the TNT to explode slightly higher than the 80 blocks. And in such a case, it's really, really useful to have some honey, which slows things down. Another consequence is that TNT can actually be activated, can use, in essence, soul sand bubble elevators. So set up this TNT and you can see it goes right up and it bounces as well, explodes because we've got some obsidian here, nothing actually broke. Another consequence of using having TNT as an entity is it can interact with slime blocks and it can also set off tripwire hooks. So here we've got a similar setup with the soul sand elevator, but basically the TNT activates the tripwire hook, 2-tick delay and gets launched off by the slime block. This is honestly really fun. You can also design something similar with only slime blocks rather than having a bubble elevator. Alright, so final points on activation. If another piece of TNT is within range of a previously activated piece of TNT, it gets set off. This causes chain reactions, which is currently most commonly being used in netherite mining. The sweet spot for netherite mining is exactly 2 blocks between 2 pieces of TNT. This way, once one piece of TNT activates, it occasionally falls down because of the netherrack, and it can still activate the next piece. Another thing that's used in TNT launchers, as they call it, is if you've got 2 pieces of TNT which are within blast range of each other, one of them explodes, launching the other one further up. So yes guys, thanks for watching. This means Kaisif, and yeah, if you have anything that I'm left out in this video, feel free to comment down below. But anyways guys, thanks for watching. This means Kaisif, and I'm outside. Ciao for now. I shall see you in the next video.